All right, let's take a look at the elite men's field that has been assembled for the Ottawa 10k. Tim, what can you tell us about some of these athletes? We've already heard Manny talk about Moses Kibet and some of the Moroccan runners, a couple of best friends who are running in this event together. So quite a deep field.
It is a strong field, yeah, and the Moroccans have come here in force because they've run well here before. Kachir there is a 26-year-old. He's run 27.50 for 10,000 metres. Anything under 28 minutes is a world class. So 27.50, very, very strong indeed. Likewise, El Arabi there, his compatriot, who will be tough here today. I think the Kenyans, though, with their very experienced Wilfred Kimitai, for example, has been around a long time, 34. He's only run 28.02, but that could be good enough to win. And interestingly, he's got a very strong track background. And I always like to hedge my bets for the guys who have got track pedigree, with that racing instinct on the track at 5,000 and 10,000 and the raw speed that they can bring to the roads, particularly over 10k, less so with a marathon. It can be a really decisive factor.
All right, let's take a look at the finish from last year. This is the 2018 Ottawa 10K, and you can see that at this point in the lead is Alia Mohammed of the United Arab Emirates. She is the lead woman, but she's overtaken here in the final few hundred meters by Adamlak Berta of Ethiopia, who is the men's winner, and he finishes the race in 27 minutes and 48 seconds to capture the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend. Big, strong finish here for Berta.
Yeah, 27.48 on the roads is top notch. I mean, the course record is 27.24 by Dariba Merga, his compatriot, an Ethiopian, back in 2009. But that is really strong running. He looks good. He obviously had that incentive to chase down the top lady. And look at that. He looks pretty easy crossing the line there. Wow.
Yeah. Why don't we take a look now at the elite women's field and talk a little bit about Perez Jepchirchir and some of the other elite women who are going to be racing today, Tim.
Yeah, Perez, delightful young lady, 24 years old. Her best is 30 minutes 55. Anything under 31 minutes puts you in a pretty rare group. She was world champion for the half marathon back in 2016 in Cardiff in the UK, in Wales, of course, in 67 minutes. And she then went on this blitz at half marathon, winning one race after another for the following year or so, culminating in that world record in February 2017, where she was a few weeks pregnant. She ran 65.06. That's a pretty good time for a guy at the half marathon. But she's just coming back now to full fitness. She says she's not the finished article, but nearly.
And Natasha Wodak, who's not on this list, but is a top-notch Canadian runner who, as Timothy mentioned, has battled through some injuries. And Tanya alluded to the fact that she's been training at altitude in the past few months. I spoke with her not so long ago about that. Here are some of the women who will be competing. Natasha Wodak, of course, has the record for the 10,000 meters. She competed in the Olympics in 2016 in Rio, and she's the second fastest Canadian 10-kilometer runner ever with the personal best of 31:59, which she ran here in 2015. So she's someone to watch in the Canadian race. You can see the elite women's field that is going to get underway in the next 10 seconds, we expect. 3 minutes and 40 seconds ahead of the elite men. So the women are ready to go. Here we go. The Ottawa 10K women's race is underway. The elite women have begun to run down Colonel By Drive in Ottawa.
And Mark, it'll be fascinating to see if they do go out really hard, the East Africans in particular, who to the right of that group, as we see it, look to have been fairly timid in the first few seconds of the race. Because if they go out slowly, if these first 3 or 5 minutes, if they don't really hit the straps, that gives the guys a chance. And I don't know if there'll be any feedback to the fellas that, in the ideal world, they would hear the 1 kilometre split of the ladies. And if it's not quick, then that will give them a little bit of extra hope in their hearts when their gun goes in about, 3 minutes time from now.
Yeah, and there is a vehicle that is close to the elite athletes, both the men and the women, and I think there are people typically shouting out split times to them so they know how fast they're going. They have their watches as well, but in a 10K race, of course, you're not going to see you're not going to see the runners looking at their watches very often in a 10K race, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the course record here is very, 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 very strong. And I shouldn't say course record, I should say event record, because of that slight adjustment to the circuit they're going to run. But, if they head for 31 minutes, these ladies, around that, then they need to be getting through 1 kilometre in 3:06. There are kilometre markers, so we'll try and keep you abreast of those kilometre splits. But it doesn't look to me like they've gone out particularly quickly. I have to say, tough to tell exactly, Mark, without any direct feedback on the road surface, no distance markers yet, but I don't think they've gone out hard.
It's a big group of runners sticking together at the start as well, which can often be a sign that nobody is pushing the boundaries too much.
Well, no, that's exactly right. But, one thing's for sure is that these Kenyan and Ethiopian athletes, and they are strong, and make no mistake, they should be a minute or so quicker than the best of the Canadians. I would love Natasha Wodak to really hang in there and battle it out with them. But they are very aware of that gender challenge bonus. At the press conference yesterday, Perez Jepchirchir made a point of saying, yeah, I won here in 2016, and she said with great pride, I won the gender challenge as well. It's another few $1,000. I mean, it's not to be sniffed at. So that will be in the back of their minds.
In about a minute from now, just over a minute from now, the elite men and the rest of the field will start. And it's worth pointing out that for thousands of runners, this is a big accomplishment. Running 10 kilometers, many of them will be doing it for the very first time in their lives, having trained for weeks, if not months, to be in this position, to be at the start line of the Ottawa 10K and to complete this race today. So it's a personal achievement and a milestone for so many runners, and we want to congratulate all of them today. There's so much to be proud of at an event like that, at an event like this, where runners are achieving really something special personally. Many of them raising money for a particular cause, many of them recovering from an illness, or in some cases people who have just taken up running late in life. I was talking to somebody on the way to the race today who hasn't run at Ottawa Race Weekend for 15 years and is really excited to be doing it again. Here we go. We're going to go to the start now and watch as the men get ready to start, the elite men and the rest of the field. There is the start line for the full field. In the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend, it is now underway. Look at all those runners. Huge group of elite runners at the front of the field. You can see the Canadian Kent wearing the blue shirt at the front of the field. And in behind them, thousands of amateur runners. We expect about 8,500 or so, who will finish in anywhere from 35 minutes to an hour and 45, maybe even 2 hours in the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend.
It is all about participating, isn't it? You can't win if you're not in, and that's for the elite, a little chant for them. But for the rest of the mark, it's just an achievement for many of them to get round. Whether it's a 10K, a half marathon, or a marathon, it's great to see so many people out there. And running is still booming. I mean, it's been a big sport in the Western world for many years. But of course, as you and I both know well, it's growing enormously in China. It's exploding in India. The sport of road racing it's going nuts. And there's 1.3 billion people in India. They reckon that there's about 1 million Indians who are jogging regularly, running regularly, and they reckon that's about 2% of the potential participation. So India is coming, believe me, and they're going to find some big talent there.
We can already see that Moses Kibet is in the lead on the men's side, along with Abdurrahmani Kachir. So those two runners, who we expected to be at the front of the pack, are doing just that at the start of this race. Moses Kibet wearing the white t-shirt, and just tucked in behind him on the left of your screen is the larger runner Kachir of Morocco. And not far behind him, it looks like Mohamed Ziani, also from Morocco, also wearing an orange shirt, is there as well in that lead group.
Yeah, Kibet there in that white vest is in fabulous form on the 21st of April, what, a month or so ago, he ran a 59.58 half marathon. Anything under 60 minutes for a half marathon, it is really superb. So Kibet at 22 is a growing force. He's only run 28.26 for 10k on the roads, but I suspect he's worth half a minute quicker than that, if not more. And he has absolutely got the bull by the horns, hasn't he? That's left a picture. He's blasted off and thrown the gauntlet down to the rest of them, and this is unusual. I mean, they've been running for just 2.5 minutes, and it's almost single file.
Yeah, and there's only 6 of them. Already a pack of 6 men has broken away from the rest of the field, and you can see there's a significant gap between them and the remainder of the field.
Yeah, no, this is honest running from Quebec, and very different to the ladies' race, where there's a pack of about 10 or 12. They're spread across the road, about 6 wide, as you can see there to write a picture in that lead women's shot. But Quebec here has taken it to the ladies, and he's obviously got that gender challenge victory in mind. And as you mentioned, Mark, it's 5 wins to the women, 4 to the men. I think maybe it was Manny Rodriguez who said that.
Yeah.
He's trying to even the score.
There you go. Yeah, it's been run 9 times, this gender challenge at Ottawa Race Weekend, and they've tried every year to calibrate the time gap perfectly to make it a real race so that it's close. And they've been very successful some years. It's come right down to the wire. And this year, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. But as Tim mentioned, 5 wins for the women and 4 for the men. So it'll either be more decisive lead for the women or we'll be tied again. But right now we have a group of really just, well, it's down to, it is still 6 men. It's still 6 men at the front of the pack, a much larger group of women leading the field at the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend.
To the right of that men's group in the orange, as we look at it, is the small figure of Mohamed Ziani. He won here back in 2016 in 28.37. That was on that very, very warm evening, and that was his first ever race outside of Morocco. And the 26-year-old obviously has got a liking for Ottawa. He won the Guangzhou Marathon in China back in early December in 2:10. He's a prolific road racer. I mean, these guys, you've got to remember, are professionals. They run for their supper, so to speak, and you know, well, they deserve whatever monies they get, because distance running at elite level is a pretty unforgiving sport. If you don't put in the effort, if you don't put in the blood and guts and tears through training month after month, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's not like a sport where there's a more obvious skill, be it baseball, hockey, cricket, you name it. This is pretty raw stuff. But Ziani there, just tucked in behind Quebec, who is, I guess at the moment, Mark, acting like an unofficial pacemaker for that men's pack.
Yeah, look at the form on Quebec. He's you can tell he's really pushing.
He is, yeah, he's very barrel-chested, isn't he?
Yeah.
Interesting arm carriage. The arms are really high up across his chest. Quebec in that white vest there. You compare that with the athlete to the left of picture, just trying to see who that is to the left in the orange. That's another of the Kenyans. I think that might be Wilfred Kimitai. And his arms much, much lower than Quebec, who's almost sort of punching the air across the front of his chest.
So the women have been running for just over 9 minutes, the men just under 6. So the women have traveled about 3 kilometers, the men about 2. We expect the men will be in under 30 minutes, of course, and the women just over 30 minutes.
Yeah, the women's race very different to the men's, and they haven't really hit the straps yet. They're just beginning to wind it up. I think Natasha Wodak is in there, second to right in that women's group. I don't know if we can see that clearly enough, but the women's race, yeah, they're just beginning to get moving, and they've been running for nearly 11.5 minutes. So I think the gender challenge at the moment is swinging towards the men. It's in favour of the men catching ladies at the moment, although actually that 3 minutes 40 is slightly generous in favour of the ladies. I think I was told that it means the men to catch the ladies have got to run around 28 minutes flat, and the ladies to keep the men at bay have to run around 32 minutes flat. But 28 minutes for a man is a good deal tougher than 32 minutes for a woman, with all due respect. Might be a lot of ladies listening who know they're running who disagree with me.
Yeah, if you look at the personal best times of the main runners in each field, you'd think that it'd be more likely for the women's group to break 32 than for a significant number of men to break 28.
No, absolutely, absolutely, especially on the roads where you expect times to be slower than on the track. You know, track racing in spikes, when you've got constant feedback from your lap splits and so on, is always a few seconds quicker than on the roads. That said, there are some athletes who are just naturally born road racers, and they prefer the rhythm of the road surface and the fact that they haven't got to be making those 2 turns every quarter mile or so, and have personal bests quicker on the roads than they do on the track. Interesting that Kimitai to the left of picture in that men's race has moved up alongside Kibet to the right, the pair of them sharing the burden of pushing the tempo at the moment. We are down to 5 athletes, Ziani and Kachir tucked in. The Moroccans at the moment almost sort of using the Kenyans as pacemakers. But Mark, you know, if you go out hard in a race, track or road race, and you're at the front, you've got to just tell yourself you are hurting the others. You're not giving them an easy ride, you're hurting them.
And you can see the men's leaders are now passing some of the women who went off in the elite women's field. So they're just catching some of the women at the back of the elite women's pack. So they're starting to reel in some of the lead women after only 10 minutes of running. But that doesn't necessarily mean they'll catch all of them. It just means they'll catch some of them. So we can see that it's Mohamed Rada El Arabi, who is the other runner in the group of 5, and really these are the 5 we expected to be competing for the title here.
Yes, they are. Yeah, El Arabi is in the white vest towards the back of the group there, well, center of the group now. Very powerfully built for a distance runner, actually, the 29-year-old Moroccan. He's run 27.58, so again under that magical 28-minute barrier for the 10k on the roads. That was in Valencia back in January, so it suggests he's had a great winter. He is a road specialist. He's run just outside 60 minutes for a half marathon, and he's strong too. He's run 2:09 for a full marathon with pretty good track speed. So El Arabi there looks pretty relaxed, doesn't he? The guy second to right in the white vest, just cruising along. I sense that the pace has slackened a little bit. Maybe it's time for one of this trio of Moroccans to come through and put in a stint at the front to keep the pace honest for the men.
At this point in the race, are you thinking about the other runners next to you, or are you just focused on running your best and running your time?
You shouldn't be. I think if you're in contention for the win, then certainly for the first 2/3 of a 10k, be it a 10,000 on the track or a 10k on the roads, you need to be pretty comfortable. You need to be knowing that the pace is hard, that it's honest, but operating within a sort of comfort zone. And then once you get past 2/3 distance, let's say 7k, then you can begin to get your head down, grit your teeth and grind it out. And if that last 8 or 10 minutes actually really hurts, you can manage that. I think sometimes it's very difficult if it's whatever road distance you're running. If you get to halfway and you're suffering, you're going to have a bad day at the office.
It looks like Wilfred Kimitai of Kenya is now slightly ahead of Moses Kibet, his countryman, at the front of the pack. They're the 2 leaders at this point, but Kimitai might be an inch or 2 in front of Kibet at this point. The 2 of them at the front of a group that also includes Mohamed Ziani of Morocco, Abdurrahmani Kachir of Morocco, and Mohamed Reda El Arabi of Morocco. So the 2 Kenyans in front, the 3 Moroccans right behind them at this stage of the 10K. We're about 12 minutes into the men's race. You can see they are passing some of the elite women's field, but the lead women are still in front of the elite men in this gender challenge. There's a look at that group of women who are now on Bronson, and they're going to cross the canal, get back down onto the Queen Elizabeth side of the canal, and start running towards the finish line. It's still several kilometers to go until the finish, but they will be heading in that direction very shortly. You'll see here that they're making a turn away from Bronson. Many runners who are familiar with this route will know that they're kind of going in the reverse direction from how the course has been run in the past, and that's because of the different start location due to construction in downtown Ottawa. But now the women are heading towards the canal again, and they'll soon be making another left turn onto Queen Elizabeth Drive, and from there will be a winding but consistent road back to downtown Ottawa and directly to the finish line.
Well, the ladies are still too bunched for my liking, Mark. That suggests they're running tactically. You know, the chances of... How many of them are there? 6, 7 of them in that pack?
Might even be 8.
The chances of them all being an identical stage of fatigue with, 17 and a half minutes on the clock are very small. And that's because they ran at least the first 10 minutes very conservatively. That may lead to the men winning this gender challenge. They're still pushing really hard, the 5 fellas out of picture. But the ladies... Well, I don't think they've cranked it up enough yet. There's one athlete beginning to peel off the back of the ladies group, but the men running aggressively. They're sharing the pace. Ziani now, left of picture, has in the orange vest, has just moved up alongside the two Kenyans, is trying to put in some effort, and we'll bring his splits as quickly as we can. We're working on that, but just what I'm seeing in front of my own eyes tells me that the men are closing on the ladies pretty quickly. I really was expecting Perez Jepchirchir to have pushed the pace earlier in the women's race and use the full distance, make it a proper 10k race as opposed to easing through the first 3 or 4 kilometers, then maybe getting her head down. Because of her strength as a half marathon runner, she would want to make every kilometer count.
Now you can see the men are making that same turn we showed you the women making just a couple of minutes ago, turning off of Bronson Avenue and heading back towards the Rideau Canal, where they will make another turn onto Queen Elizabeth Drive. It continues to be Kimitai in the lead with Cadet right next to him, El Arabi in there as well. Again, you notice the difference between the running styles of Kibet and Kimitai. Kimitai looks more relaxed. I don't know if that means anything in the end, but he looks more relaxed than Kibet at this point in the race.
Yeah, Kibet, I mean, as we've alluded to already, you know, he's got this strange running style, and El Arabi just hitting the front there for the first time. I think it's about the first point in the whole race, Mark, for the men, and they've been running 15 and a half minutes. That there hasn't been a Kenyan at the front there. So good to see these Kenyans and Ethiopians and Moroccans sharing the workload. But this is a critical stage for the men. 15, almost 16 minutes into the men's race. They've passed halfway. They have got to really work this third quarter if they're to catch the ladies. This is critical, this next 4 or 5 minutes for the men.
Almost 20 minutes into the women's race and still a pack of about 6 runners leading the women's field. And we're just over 16 minutes into the men's race. And there's a group of 5 runners that has been together consistently from the start. And all 5 of them were among the favorites for this race. So you can see they are continuing to pass some of the elite women's field. Some of the women at the back of that pack, they're just coming underneath the Bronson Road Bridge again. And
Ziani beginning to impose himself on this.
Go.
This is impressive. Remember back in December, ran that quick marathon in China. He's got very modest track times, but he's really working this one. He's run 4 marathons with that personal best of 2:09. He's focused on marathon training recently, but he did say at the press conference yesterday his preparation has gone really well for this since that marathon in December. He loves his racing. He's run 15 half marathons in the last 4 years. You know, that's nearly 4 per year. That is really hitting it hard.
And he is the 2016 champion here in Ottawa, of course, and there were some very difficult conditions for that race. First of all, he had trouble getting here. There were passport issues, and so he was delayed in arriving in Ottawa. Now you're seeing the men having to kind of reconfigure a little bit and choose which side of some of the women to go around here. So they're weaving in and out of some of the women that they're catching and going around them on different sides, and that may have shaken up the men's race a little bit, but continues to be Ziani in the lead. He won in a time of 28:37 in 2016 on a warm and humid night. His personal best 27 minutes 28 seconds. So he's gone much faster than the time that it took to win the race in 2016.
He was 4th here last year, Ziani, so it looks to me like he's come back here in better shape, Mark. He was 4th in 28:23 last year. But he has run 27:28, although that was in Casablanca, back in Morocco, when the course was not measured correctly, and I understand the times are about a minute quicker than they really should have been in that race. So his genuine personal best, I think, is 28:21.
You can see the women's field is thinned out now. It's turned into a race among 3 women at the front of the pack, and it's very difficult to tell who it is who is in that group. But I think Perez Jepchirchir is the one who is in the lead at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's whittled down very quickly, hasn't it? That suggests that somebody has cranked it up pretty viciously, Mark, because literally in, what, about 3 minutes, that little that field of 6 or 7 ladies, which was looking a little too comfortable for 20 minutes and more, has been ripped apart by this surge, and maybe that's the decisive move which will stop the men catching the ladies. 23 minutes on the clock for the ladies. If they've got to run, let's say 32 minutes, they've got 9 minutes to go. The men closing all the time, but it's going to be very tight indeed, I sense.
All of it will be decided in the next 8 or 9 minutes here. The women already 23 minutes into their 10K race. The men 19 minutes and 45 seconds, so just under 20 minutes. Still 5 men battling for the lead, trading positions every few hundred meters or so. We can see on the men's side that Moses Kibet is pushing towards the lead again. Ziani is up there along with Kimitai. And in the women's race, it looks like it's now come down to these 2 runners. There's a 3rd runner in behind, but starting to fall back a little bit.
Yeah, Valerie Jamali it is who leads that women's race there.
That is Jamali, yeah.
To write a picture. And Jamali is a 31:07 athlete, and that was in Kenya at altitude back in December 2017. She's better known as a marathon runner, very strong athlete. She's run 2:20 for the marathon. That was the 3rd place in Berlin a couple of years ago. The course, which is known as the quickest marathon circuit in the world. And as a marathon runner, well, she is special. She's won 5 of her last 8 marathons, and she is making this, albeit over the last third of that women's 10K. She's making it a real test of strength here, so I admire this big surge from Valerie Jamali, the 27-year-old.
And it's Dorcas Kimeli who is in 2nd, or right next to her, really. Those are the 2 runners who are now leading the women's 10K at Ottawa race weekend. So it's not Perez Jepchirchir as had been expected. I'm sure she was in that larger group, but everybody except these 2 runners has fallen back now. And with just a few minutes to go in the 10K, it is 2 Kenyans who are leading the way for the women. Meanwhile, on the men's side, we have a group of 5 runners, including 3 Kenyans and 2 Moroccans.
Now, what's kind of ironic is the picture we're looking at now, Mark, with the men bunched together. You could almost throw a blanket over this group of 5 men.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that one of them needs to throw the gauntlet down and kick hard here with, what, 21 or nearly 22 minutes on the clock for the men. They've only got about 6 minutes of running to go. The ladies, likewise. If the men are going to catch the leading ladies, they've got to really kick in hard here. They're into what is effectively almost the last mile for them, perhaps 4, maybe 5 laps of a running track. And this is where they've got to change gear as they catch Hoover up Setlak, one of the leading Canadians. This is where they're critical, this next minute or 2, where somebody from that men's pack has got to push on to close on the leading pair of ladies. But I do sense that they're running so hard, Kimeli and Jamali, the 2 Kenyans out in front, that maybe they're going to stay clear. Dorcas Kimeli is made a big improvement last year. Ran 68 minutes for a half marathon back in March, so she's clearly in very good shape, the 22-year-old. She's by some margin the youngest of the 2.
The men's field has started to turn it on a little bit, and that group is now spread out into a bit of a line, a single file with Ziani, the Moroccan, at the front. It's 3 Moroccans and 2 Kenyans in this group of 5 runners, but it looks like Moses Kibet has fallen off the back of the pack. So it is at the front of this group, Ziani and Kashir and Al Arabi, who are the 3 leading men's runners in the 10K. Meanwhile, on the women's side, it continues to be a battle for first between Valerie Jamali and Dorcas Kimeli.
I just wonder whether Ziani can do any more here. He's run really hard. He took the lead a few minutes ago, around 20 minutes into the race, and is pushing on hard. It is interesting, and this is an unusual situation, Mark. See 3 Moroccans easing away from the brace of Kenyans. And I must say, I feel for Moses Kibet, who did so much of the early work in this race, but he's dropped back into 5th place now. And the taller of the 3 Moroccans now pushing to the front, Kachir.
The women's runners are now north of the Pretoria Bridge in downtown Ottawa, so they are heading into the final stretch of the Ottawa 10k towards the finish line for all of the races here this weekend. It is one finish line for the 2k, 5k, 10k, half marathon, marathon, and kids marathon. And the women are now pushing towards that. Kimeli and Jameli, both Kenyans, side by side, heading down the final stretch of the Ottawa 10k. Meanwhile, on the men's side, it continues to be Mohamed Ziani of Morocco with a slight lead on Mohamed Breda El Arabi of Morocco. And it looks like Abdurrahmani Kachir has dropped back a little bit. He's in 3rd place. So the men are pushing now, and they're approaching this stretch just north of the Pretoria Bridge. You can see the area of the Pretoria Bridge just behind them, and they're now going under the Queensway, Highway 417 here in Ottawa, passing more of the elite women as they do. And you get another look at the elite women going by, one of our vantage points. And it is Valerie Jameli with a slight lead on Dorcas Kimeli. But it's close in the women's race.
Yeah, they're
pushing
working
each other
together.
here.
I mean, they're helping each other, I guess, Mark, to stay clear of the men. The men are gradually hunting them down, and, you know, the 3 Moroccans are working so hard to try and close that gap. But they are really tanking along now, these 2 ladies, and you can see Kimeli and Jameli both working very, very hard. And I think now they're racing each other. For about the last 5 minutes, they've been helping each other. But now there's a bit of daylight between them. They're in single file, and I think that's Jameli, is it,
Yeah.
who has hit the front?
Valerie Jameli is slightly ahead, with Dorcas Kimeli just behind her. And it won't be long now before we'll begin to see them from the finish line.
Well, Jameli is running her first 10k outside of Kenya. She's more of a marathon runner and looking very strong here. And Diwa, that is. Moving to Stacey and Diwa, the 26-year-old. She's run 31:27 at altitude. She's a very, very quick athlete and a quick half marathon runner as well. But she's in the wake of Kimeli and Jameli. They have run supremely strongly this last 10 minutes or so, Mark, and if they do stay clear of the men, they will have earned it.
We're just at a point in the race, of course, where all of the vehicles that are leading the runners have to get off the course to allow them to finish the race, and our cameras in the backs of those vehicles are no longer able to provide the same kinds of pictures. But now we have, from a fixed camera position near the finish line, we have sight of Valerie Jameli leading the women to the finish. Just over 30.5 minutes now, and she's turning it on towards the finish line. Dorcas Kimeli, also of Kenya, is chasing her down, and I don't think the men are going to catch these women. And now it's turning into a race between Kimeli and Jameli.
Wow,
Dorcas Kimeli really trying to turn it on here, and she's taken the lead. Kimeli taking the lead and racing towards the finish line, pouring it on at the finish. Dorcas Kimeli of Kenya is the winner of the Ottawa 10K, with Valerie Kimeli, her compatriot, just behind her. And Kimeli wins not only the women's race, but also the gender challenge.
Well, the closing speed, Mark, was astonishing, because that winning time I got at 31:07. That is quick, considering they didn't really get working for the first 10 minutes or so.
And Kipkoech is in 3rd. Ndiwa in 4th place. And we're waiting now for the top man to come across the finish line. It looks like it will be Mohamed Ziani of Morocco. Here he comes to the finish. Ziani is the winner of the 10K at Ottawa Race Weekend. He bends to the ground. He kisses the ground, the wet ground here in Ottawa. And Kimitai is in second place.
Well, I got that winning time in the men's race at around 28:09, 28:10 unofficially. And Ziani ran a very, very honest race, didn't he?
Kachir finishing third. Now we're waiting for the top Canadian woman.
Is that Natasha Wodak?
I think it is Natasha Wodak who is going to be the Canadian champion. There it is. No surprise to see Natasha Wodak coming across in 32.5 minutes. And she wins the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, I got Natasha there at 32:29. She's worked for that as Natasha. One of the problems, of course, for the athletes who get dropped early on in the race, and you will get dropped early on when the leaders are moving at 31-minute tempo, is that you must spend an awful lot of the race on your own mark, and that makes it doubly tough. Being solo, out on those roads, having to gauge your own effort with nobody around you.
And here comes Setlak in second place among Canadians and getting a hug from Natasha Wodak.
So Jessica O'Connell coming through. Good run from the 30-year-old.
Yeah. 33:23 unofficially for O'Connell.
Yeah, she's a 32:22 runner, Jessica O'Connell. She'll be maybe a little bit disappointed with that.
And there's Dylan Wykes winning the men's race. Dylan Wykes will be the Canadian men's champion this year. What a run for him.
Yeah, we've hardly mentioned
right around
Dylan.
30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, is a great athlete in his time. He's 35 now, and, he has run 28:12 on the track, which probably equates to, 28:30. So around 30 minutes on the roads here today is a lot slower than he's run in the past, Dylan, but he's won that Canadian title, as you say, so he is national champion.
There are the Canadian champions, Dylan Wykes and Natasha Wodak. Dylan Wykes, of course, Canadian Olympic marathoner, one of that group of 3 men who finally qualified for the Olympics and were able to go to the Olympics after so many years without a Canadian man at the Olympics in the marathon, along with Reed Coulsett and Eric Gillis.
And he ran supremely in London 2012. He finished in 20th place on the streets of London on that crowded circuit in 2 hours 15. A great performance in an Olympic marathon for Dylan Wykes, and great performance today.
Yeah. And Dylan Wykes has turned his attention to coaching. He's moved to Ottawa, and he's had a real impact on so many runners that he leads and coaches and encourages and inspires. And so great to see him having such a great performance today. Again, not somebody that we were necessarily thinking of as among the certainly any race that Dylan Wykes is in, he's going to be a competitor, but he wasn't necessarily one of the favorites for the Canadian title this time around.
But he is a class act, and class is permanent, form is temporary, as they say. Dylan is, we know he's in good form. He won the Vancouver half back on the 10th of February in 66 minutes exactly. That's solid running, and if he's put in a bit of speed work over this last couple of months, then no wonder he's run pretty well today.
I caught a glimpse. It's so hard to keep track of everybody and what category they're in coming across the finish line, but Melindy Elmore of Canada, I think, may have finished second among the Canadian women, but she needed some medical attention right after she crossed the finish line. I don't know if she crossed ahead of Emily Setlak or just behind her, but we'll get the official results on that. But I hope she's okay. She did need some immediate attention after crossing the finish line.
If she was second, that's a great run from Melindy Elmore.
Yeah.
I mean, she's 39 years old. Natasha was the Canadian champion, 37 years old. It's a day for the more experienced athletes, let's say.